Hello everyone, Victor Johnson with Lighting Up Paxton, back on YouTube again with another how-to video. This one is going to be about custom length extension cords and how the extreme Christmas decorator, or professional Christmas decorator if you will, makes their own custom length, custom sized extension cords, and even light strings like these screw base socket sets for C7 and C9s. How we make them custom length for our display, or custom space sockets and things like that. So this video is going to be a lot of fun about a lot of different tips and tricks on making extension cords and how everyone who makes those big elaborate Christmas displays goes about it. So first of all, first topic to discuss is going to be extension cord part of it. So everyone has seen these in the store, the big old 16 gauge or even 14 gauge extension cords. Some of them have the triple tap on the end of it, some have just one female end. And these are great for doing small Christmas displays, or maybe running lights to one item somewhere in your yard that's got like a tree, it's got a whole bunch of lights on it, because these can take, I believe a lot of these cords are rated up to 13 amps. Yeah, 13 right here on the tag. So very good cord. It's grounded too, so it's safe. So no problems with this cord. The problem is that for the extreme Christmas decorators who have lots of different small items to run lights to, and run different cords to all their different items, this is nowhere near cost effective to utilize in our displays. So what we're going to do is we're going to make our own custom length cords, and the way that we do it is with lamp wire. So this is lamp wire, otherwise called zip cord, and it's just a 2-conductor wire. So you can see right here, there's just 2 wires on this cord, whereas our big grounded cord right here has 3. There's the 3 prongs right there on that plug. So there's no ground on this cord, but we really don't need a ground because all of our Christmas lights aren't going to have grounds on them. So to us it's not going to be as essential. And the nice thing about this lamp wire or zip cord is it's very easy to put plugs on anywhere we want. Whereas this cord, if we cut this to try and short it down from this 20-footer that I'm stuck with, if I try and short this down to 10 feet, I'm going to have to buy a new socket, and it's got screw terminals, and it's nowhere near waterproof, and it's going to cause a bunch of problems and time to put something like this together. So the nice thing about zip cord is it's a lot easier. A couple things to address before we get to all the plugs and the different things I've got here on the workbench. Zip cord, otherwise known as lamp wire, is just like your common household extension cord wire, essentially. It comes in 2 different sizes. There's SPT1, which I have here, which you can see is a thinner gauge. This is usually 18 gauge wire, so it can only handle about 7 or 8 amps. And then there's a thicker gauge, 16 gauge wire, and a 16 gauge wire is usually going to be SPT2, which is your typical household extension cord. So here's just your common indoor extension cord that you can buy from any store, you know, with the plug end on the side here. And you can see this is the same exact wire. It's just that one is a little thicker than the other one. Now the SPT1 and SPT2 just refers to how wide the overall thickness of the wire is, including the insulation jacket on the outside. It doesn't necessarily refer to what gauge it is, but usually you're going to find out that SPT1 is going to be 18 gauge, so you can handle 7 or 8 amps on this. And then the SPT2 is going to be 16 gauge, so I think most of these cords are going to be rated up to 10 amps. So what the big Christmas decorators do is we'll buy this wire in bulk. So I have a 500-foot spool here, or what started out as a 500-foot spool, and you can get these spools in both sizes, SPT1 or 2. Now I choose to go with SPT1 because it's thinner gauge, and I find I don't really need to have the extra 2 or 3 amp capacity on the wires anyway. It's also a little bit cheaper than SPT2. The plugs slide on a little bit easier, and it also happens to match most of our socket wire, which also happens to be SPT1. So it makes a lot of sense in my case to have the SPT1 wire. Now you can get these spools from several good online commercial vendors. I'll post them in the description. You can also get them at the big box stores, you know, Home Depot, Lowe's. Here in the Midwest, I usually get some from Menards. Some of the online dealers will say that they have a UV protective jacket on the outside, which means they'll resist sunlight more than some others. Honestly, if you're doing a seasonal Christmas display, it's only going to be out there 1 or 2 months out of the year. It's not going to be too essential for it to have UV protection. I'm sure it might last maybe longer in the long run, but you're talking at that point, you know, almost a decade in order before you even start seeing any kind of wear on these. It's only going to be out there about a month at a time. So here's a 500-foot spool. here's a 250-foot spool that I bought at Menards. You know, that's been emptied already. And then here's what was a 1,000-foot spool. So you can get all kinds of different sizes. The pricing on the 250-foot spool, I found these at my local big box lumber yard for about $34 for 250 feet worth for SPT1. So you can see right there, lamp cord 18.2, so it's 18 gauge. And so, you know, do the math for a 1,000-foot spool. You're probably gonna be looking maybe 120 bucks online. And sometimes those vendors run sales different times of the year. You might even be able to get 1,000 feet for a total of 100 bucks if you get a really good deal, maybe. So I'll put all those links in the description. Some of them even advertise in my videos sometimes, so it's kind of neat. So we have this lamp wire, and it comes in different colors too. So we have green here. I've also utilized black, brown. You can even get white. The nice thing about white, say you have a white siding on your house and you want to, say, put some lights on a window or a wreath on top of your house, you can actually run that white cord up the side of your house and it will disappear at nighttime because it'll blend with the siding. So I tend to use just the green, browns, and blacks in my yard. The nice thing too is that you can mix different colors. So say all the green wires can run to one kind of color of lights, all the brown wires can run a different color. I wish I would have started out doing that from the first place, but it's a kind of neat trick you can do as well. Anyway, I find this is a really convenient way to do this. So we have our zip cord here, our lamp wire, SPT1 or SPT2. So here I just cut off a section. So we have this wonderful spool of wire. How the heck are we going to take this, 500 foot of wire and cut it into the lengths we need? Well, here I just, for sample, cut a 1 foot length. And they make what they call vampire plugs. And these plugs are called vampire plugs. So you can see here's your standard plug right here. It's just a 2-prong plug because we only got 2 conductors here. And if you look inside here, if I get the camera angle right, you can see there's little prongs. There you go, right there. See the little vampire teeth sticking out? So those will make contact with the wire. When we push this wire into the socket, those prongs will pierce the insulation of the wire and make contact. So it'll complete the circuit through the plug. So these plugs slide on very quickly, and I'll do a quick tutorial here on how to utilize these. So you can buy these plugs. Home Depot has them online, usually during the fall or winter months when a lot of the Christmas decorators are putting stuff out. Otherwise, you can get them online at all the good commercial online vendors that I'll post in the description as well. Basically, if you can get this stuff anywhere online, you can usually get the plugs that go with it because they go hand in hand. So these plugs, if you look deep inside here, so this plug has 2 ends to it. There is the end here where the wire is going to come out of, right here, and then there's a solid end right here. So we're going to push this wire into the solid end and then bend it over, and they make these really neat little backs that slide right on. Now if you look inside here though, on the end where it slides into, deep inside there, if I can get the light right, you can barely make it out, there's a little divider, plastic divider in there. The reason why that plastic divider is in there is because when we put this wire into this plug, we don't want any arcing across where we cut this wire here. We don't want that to short out. So what we're going to do is, when we cut our wire to size, like that for example, then I'm going to hold up the camera here and I'm going to take my little bypass nippers, and I'm going to cut about a 1/4 inch right down the middle of the insulation jacket. So I haven't actually cut the wire, I just separated the 2 insulation jackets right there. So that wire is still protected in there. So what that little plastic divider piece in our plug here is going to fit right into between those 2 wires to keep them separated so they can't short. So the other thing, before I stick this wire in here, we need to check our polarity. Now if you've watched some of my other Christmas light videos, you understand how important polarity is to knowing which way electricity is flowing through your wire. And the reason why polarity is going to be important in our case is because anytime you plug something into this extension cord we're making, you want to make sure that the hot, which is the small prong, remember the hot's always on the small prong, is the side of the wire that's pushing the power, because inside a light socket, if we look inside here, we see the center contact, that little brass piece in the center of the bulb. That is where the hot wire is. That's where electricity is going to be coming from. It's going to make contact with the bottom of our bulb right here. Right here, this little gray piece on the bottom. And then on the side of the socket, there's another brass contact, and that's going to make contact with the screw portion of the bulb. So the power is flowing in through the middle of the bulb and then out through the screw portion of the bulb. And what's going to happen is, if we have our polarity incorrect, when we screw our bulb on, we could accidentally have our fingers touching the side of the bulb here when it makes contact with the side of the socket. And if we have our polarity wrong and that side of the socket is hot, which means it has power, then we could shock ourselves. Which is why we always want to make sure the part of the socket that has the power coming to it is the bottom of the socket, which is the hot. Now the neat thing is about all of these socket strings, and also all of our zip cord, our SPT1 and 2, is that they all have a ribbed edge. So if you feel this wire, one side here is smooth, and if I feel this edge, I feel a little rib on the side of it. You can probably barely make it out on the camera if I hold it up. Yeah, it's probably not going to focus very well. But there is a rib on one side, so it's very easy to feel. And that rib side is always going to be the neutral end, which means the side that doesn't have the power coming from it. It's only completing the circuit. Same thing with our household extension cord. Grab one of these guys. Here you can probably see this better. There is a rib right here on the left side. Yeah, you can see that rib right there. Right there is where our rib is. And the other side here is smooth. So, I'm going to take my cord I have here, find the rib side, which here is on the left, and I'm going to take our vampire socket and I'm going to find the wide prong, which is the one right here on top. And I'm going to look at that vampire tooth and see the wide prong vampire tooth is on the right. So which means I want the neutral, which is the rib side of the wire, to be on the right as well. So I'm actually going to flip this wire. So here's where I cut it. I'm going to flip this wire and make sure I have it on the rib side on the right, just like that. So we're going to do rib side of the wire onto the neutral, larger prong of the plug. And we're going to slide it right in there. And you'll feel it slide into that little divider inside this plug. And then we're going to bend it over, and we're going to push it onto those vampire teeth. And you'll feel it slide right on. And we're going to take the back of our plug, which slides on right here on the side of the plug, just like this. And the slide-on plugs, they have an open end, and they have an end with a stop on it. And the stop always goes over the end of the wire here, so open end first. I'm going to slide it on just like that. So you can see there's our stop. Now when I slide these on, sometimes when you slide these plugs on, the wire will move with it. And when the wire moves with it, it can bend those vampire prongs over so they won't make contact, so your cord will actually not have a complete circuit in it. So in order to keep the wire from moving with the slide-on back, I hold the wire down like this with my thumb, and that keeps the wire from sliding as well, so you don't bend over those vampire prongs. And we push it over like that. So there you go. There we have our male plug. Female plug on the other end, we're going to do the same exact thing. Just as a review, I'm going to nip about a 1/4 inch of the middle of the jacket here, just like that, to make sure I didn't accidentally cut the wire in the middle, which I did not. And here's our female plug. Same way, we see the wide prong and the small prong. So the wide prong always going to be the neutral. So we take our wide prong right here, we're going to flip it over, it's on the top here, and we see that our neutral is going to be on the left. So I'm going to grab my wire, I'm going to feel for the rib and make sure it's on the left. So I'm feeling it, and I feel the rib right here on the left. So that's all matched up. So we have our female plug right here. There's our neutral, and so our neutral is going to be here on the left. So I'm going to slide it right through here, the back of the plug. Right here, I'm going to slide it right in. And I'll feel it go over that divider. You can feel it slide right in. And I'm going to bend it up, push it on with my thumb, and I'm going to take my back piece, put it on, and I'm going to hold down with my thumb right here while I slide it on. Oh, so the camera can see. There you go. Just like that. Now, these dark green plugs here that I've got from Home Depot, this is the kind that they have, and also most of the online vendors I've come across the same plug. These are really nice. They're very easy to put on with your hands. They're not too difficult. Now, some of the plugs, here's a plug I have from another vendor. And these plugs, you can see they're made of a little different plastic material, and they don't slide quite as easily, which is a good and a bad thing. The good thing being is that when you slide them on, they won't ever come off, because once in a while I run into one of these backs of these plugs getting caught on something, and it might come off, and so your plug will fall off. But these definitely don't do that. But the problem is they're really difficult to slide on sometimes. So the way that I go about putting these on is with the channel lock pliers. So I got my pair of channel locks here. I'll use a small one here as an example. So when you put your cord in here and you say you want to slide your back on, all you do is take your channel lock pliers to help you pull that back of the plug on just like that. And again, when you do that, hold that wire down with your thumb real tight, because you don't want that wire sliding with the back and pushing those vampire prongs over. You want those vampire plug prongs to still stick up and pierce the insulation. So there's a trick with that. Now, the cool thing about making our custom length cords here, so now here's just a 1-foot cord example, but what if I had a series of bushes all lined up in a row? Well, I can run one cord to each one of those bushes so long as I want them all on the same circuit. And I can put on an inline plug. So say you run one thin wire like this from one bush to another, and I just put an inline plug in the middle. To do that, we're just going to take one of our little female plugs here, and we need to make it so the wire can pass the entire way through. So we're going to take our snippers here, and if you snip right through, sometimes you can run a crack all the way down that plug. We don't want to break this plug. And in fact, if you look carefully in the camera here, you can see there's a little bit of a scoring mark here where it's already kind of partially scored to pop that out. You can also use a file if you want to and file the plastic down so you have just enough room for that wire to come out right here. But I found the easiest way to do it is just to take my little bypass snippers, and instead of grabbing it and pulling straight down on it and causing it to crack, I'm just going to kind of tear at it a little bit. So again, I'm not going very far, just maybe like 3/16 of an inch. And I'm going to tear it, hold down tight, and I'm just going to kind of bend it over and tear on it. Now see how we made a little bit of a tear there? That's perfect. We didn't cause any cracking or anything like that. So I'm going to take up my cutters and I'm going to go on the other end, and same thing, I'm going to tear at it. Just like that. So you can see what we've done now is we've created a little flap. So we're almost there. Now we just got to cut that flap off. So I'll take my cutters right there. Now I can clamp down and cut it right off. Just like that. You can see now we have a place for that wire to pass straight through the plug. So again, take my wire, feel for the ribbed edge. It's right here on the left. So I'm going to take my female plug here again, and I'm going to find my wider prong, which is here on the bottom. So now I'm going to flip it, now it's on the top. And that prong is also on the left, so we're perfect. So I'm going to put this right on here. Now the factory hole, which is right here on the top, this is our factory hole, that's the one that's going to get the stop. So we're going to put it on from the factory side. And again, hold down this wire with my fingers so we don't want this wire to slide. It slides very easily on an inline plug especially. And I'm just going to take my finger and I'm going to push that back of the plug over. Whoops, slipped on my hand. Okay, push it right over just like this. There we go. So we have our male end, inline plug, and then the other end. Now you can put as many inline plugs as you want on a wire like this. Just remember, you can only have one male plug on a cord, because if you plug this into an outlet, you don't want another male end live over here because you can shock yourself. And you can do a male plug on the inline plug as well and have a female on one end and a female on the other. So a place where that may come in handy is maybe if you have an outlet right between two bushes and you want to run a cord from that outlet to each bush or something like that. So there's a tip there for inline plugs. Okay, so the next thing to address is how do we take what we learned here about making custom length cords and applying it to our custom length socket wire right here. Now this socket wire here is just a simple C9 string that I had bought at one of my stores locally, one of the big box stores, and it's all SPT1 wire, the same stuff that I've got right here. And you can also buy this socket wire from the commercial vendors. Again, same place you can get the plugs and same place you can get the wire. But the nice thing about this cord is that, as you've watched in maybe some of my previous videos, this is a parallel circuit, which means we can cut this cord anywhere between any bulb or after any bulb and put one of our little vampire plugs on to shorten this to any custom length we want. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a couple plugs here. Okay, we have our male plug and we have our female plug. Now, this C9 wire, if you buy it in the store, is going to come with this fuse plug on it. Now again, this is very important. As we talked about, these sockets are polarized, so we want our plug to be polarized, and these do come with a polarized plug. If you open up this plug, you'll notice there's two fuses in it. Now these are 5 amp fuses, so the manufacturer is going to rate this as saying you can plug 2 end to end, which is right because they use 1.5 amps per 25 count string. So another thing these plugs are good for is we can cut this socket off and we can plug safely, I would say 4 of these 25 count strings, so it'll be 100 total bulbs of C9 sockets. So these plugs, by the way, they have 2 fuses in them. If you notice, the fuse on the left has no brass contacts. The brass contacts are only the one on the right. It's because on these plugs, the only prong that's fused is the hot, the small one, because that's where the power is coming from. So that's where. So if you ever blow a fuse in one of these, all you do is pop that one out, and this extra one here is just a spare. So you move that one over to where the brass contacts are, and you just have that empty space there. There's a little tip on one of those. But what I tend to do, since I run an all-incandescent display, I want to connect 4 of these end to end, not just 2. So I tend to cut off the first 2 plugs in any string of 4 I have, so I can get work around that fuse. That is something, another disclaimer about using these plugs. There is no fuse on them, so it's very important to keep track of your amperage. A 25 count C9 string, as I said, is going to use 1.5 amps per string. Your typical mini light string is going to use 1/3 of an amp per string. And the way you can keep track of all that is I have my little handy dandy kilowatt meter. You get these from Lowe's, Home Depot, different places like that. They're only 10 or 15 bucks. And they can tell you exactly how many amps something is using, whatever you end up plugging into it. So it's a very handy thing. So remember our ampacities. SPT1 we're going to be limited to 7 or 8, and SPT2 we're going to be limited to about 10. Now, if you have a long run, this wire is thin enough where you can't really have a long run over 50 feet of anything. If you do start getting long runs from your outlet to whatever display item you want to use, you have to start thinking about, okay, that wire is going to have a lot of voltage drop, and you won't be able to run 7 amps through it. You may only be able to run 4 or 5 because you don't want your wire to overheat. So keep that in mind. So here's our socket string again. Same thing, we can cut this wire anywhere, and because it's the same wire, we can put it in our snap-on plugs. Just very briefly, we've done it before already. I'm going to feel for the rib wire, which is on the left. I'm going to cut the wire right here, 1/4 inch down. Take my male plug here, and I'm going to line up my wide prong, which is on the right. I'm going to make sure I have my neutral, which is the rib, on the right. So I'm going to turn it over. Slide it into the plug, feel it go over that divider that's inside here, bend it over, and put on the back of my plug. Perfect, just like that. So that's how we can make custom length cords. So if you can run one of these C9 cords, these are really nice for running up the eaves of your roof. And say at the peak of your roof you have one eave meeting another. Well, instead of having to run a separate cord all the way up to it, we can now stick our female inline plug right here. Say this is the peak of our gable of our house. We can put a female plug here and run another string perpendicular, so we have a place where 3 strings all meet in one spot. So that's a neat trick that you can do with the socket wire, which is why I like working with this kind of socket wire. So the other thing, the last thing we can do with this kind of wire is not only do we have these vampire plugs, we have vampire sockets that I have right here. So here's the C9 socket, just like we have on our HomeBot string right here. Same exact inside, just a typical C9 socket, only with this one we're actually going to be able to snap onto the wire like our vampire plugs. So again, we check our polarity. We want the middle to be the hot and the side to be the neutral. So if we flip this over, we can see our vampire prongs. This one's the neutral, and here's the hot in the middle. So we look it up in the camera here. So on the left is on the side, that's our neutral. So we want our rib wire to be on the left. So I'll take my wire right here. I'm going to feel for the rib, which is on the right now. So I'm going to flip it over. And then we're just going to push this socket right onto that wire. And you'll see that wire will nest right into the back of that socket, just like that. See how it nested right in there? And then some sockets are different depending on what manufacturer you buy these from. Again, same place you can buy all these plugs from. Here's the little back that snaps right in, and so this one is really nice because I can snap it in so the clip is on this side, or I can flip it around so the clip is on this side. Some of them you can't necessarily do that, but they all work pretty well. So I'm just going to slide this in just like that. Now these are very difficult to push on just by hand. So again, I'm going to go to my channel lock pliers here, and I'm going to very carefully push it right onto the socket just like this. And I'm going to very carefully, I don't want to damage the edge of the socket here too much. I'm just going to carefully clamp down. You'll see that back end close. And what that's doing is that's pushing that wire onto those vampire prongs, and the clip is going to lock it into place. Then I close it up there. I'm going to go ahead and flip it over. I'll give it one more go on this end. Just like that. So there we have our C9 socket. So the cool thing about having your own C9 sockets is that you can make any custom spacing. So say I had a long driveway I want to line, well I can put one of these every 4 or 5 feet, or even one every 10 feet. Then since I've got a huge spool of wire like this, I can make a really long string of lights to go down like a long lane or something like that. But because I'm only using a socket every 5 or 10 feet, it's not using that much power, so I can get away with doing something like that. Especially if you use an LED retrofit bulb that you can screw in. So those are all the tips I've got for making custom length extension cords and custom length C9 strands, or even C7. You can get these same sockets in C7 size, which is the slightly smaller size bulb. So if you have any comments or questions, leave them down in the bottom of the video there, and I'll try and get to answering as many as I can. So thank you for watching and subscribing, and hopefully I'll be back with another video shortly. If you got any tips, leave them in the comments of something else you want to learn next time. Thank you.